10 years and 2 administrations ago, I was honored to gavel in the first hearing on this legislation. Today, I'm honored to gavel in this hearing as chair of the committee. It was 20 years ago, that I first introduced the DREAM Act with the chair of the committee at the time, Republican Senator Orrin Hatch. Senator Hatch said it was his idea. There was some dispute over that, but since he was in the majority, I deferred to him as the lead sponsor of the first DREAM Act. Our stories about the DREAM Act have touched the hearts of Americans. The phrase itself, dreamers, which was not identified early on with this cause, has now become common parlance. We revel in the stories of those who are affected by the DREAM Act and DACA because they are the stories of America and our history of immigration. Before we get started, I'd like to ask my colleagues to join me in viewing a video on this issue.
When I was 14 years old, I was brought to the U.S. to escape the increasingly erratic political climate in Nigeria.
Although I did not make the choice to come to America, this country quickly became my home.
For me, everything I've ever known is in Las Vegas.
I enlisted in the United States Army.
I graduated with a chemical engineering degree.
In Afghanistan, I fought side by side with my Army brothers. It mattered more that we were willing to die for each other and for our country than where we came from.
They gave up everything they knew to come to this country for us, for their children.
I excelled and I thought that I was just like my classmates until the time came to apply for colleges. My guidance counselors then told me that it was the end of the road for my academic career.
So even though I had a STEM degree and there were jobs available, no one would hire me in this field because I didn't have legal status.
It's been nearly 10 years since graduation, and I'm yet to work a day as an engineer.
In an effort to get right with the law, my dad had paid a notario to file an immigration application. We were taken advantage of. While she was doing this, she was draining our life savings.
I was awakened with a police officer by my bed, being rounded up around our dining room table. The same table that every week my family would sit around to read the Bible.
The only thing worse than having your dreams dashed or being rejected by my own country is losing my father and not being able to say goodbye.
You're not attacking a stranger. You're attacking the girl who sits next to your grandson in chemistry class.
Too many young people like me are carrying burdens that we were never meant to carry.
There are people that, like my family, are only making our country a better place. They volunteer in our communities, they go to church with us, they go to school with us.
I don't believe that I'm entitled to anything more than this great nation has taught me, that we all have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
We as dreamers have something to offer to the country we always considered our home.
Through the love that we have for this country, through the love that we have and that our pastors and faith leaders are providing, we're going to finally, through love, see justice.
My name is Oscar Vasquez, and I am proud to be an American.
It was 9 years ago today when President Obama walked into the Rose Garden and announced a new policy that would change the lives of hundreds of thousands of young people in our country. It is called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, better known as DACA. DACA allows young immigrants who arrived in America as children to safely remain in the only home they've ever known. If they register with the government, pay a substantial fee, clear criminal and national security background checks, then they can receive temporary renewable protection from deportation. Since 2012, more than 800,000 Dreamers have stepped out of the shadows to enroll in DACA. The program has been a life changer. It has allowed them to work, pursue higher education, and serve in America's military. DACA has unleashed the full potential of Dreamers. August 15th, 2012 is a date I will never forget. It was the first day that DACA applications were accepted. I was at Navy Pier in Chicago for a workshop to help Dreamers apply for DACA. We weren't sure if anyone would show up, then we weren't sure how many would show up, and then what happened astonished us. Thousands of young people showed up on that day, filled the entire boardwalk. Some gathered with their parents at midnight before the actual opening that morning. Some drove in from neighboring states. That's how eager these young people were to officially become part of America, even if on a temporary renewable basis. And that's what's really the key word when it comes to DACA. It's temporary. When President Obama first announced it, he said, because this is temporary, Congress needs to act. There's still time for Congress to pass the DREAM Act this year, he said, because these kids deserve to plan their lives in more than 2-year increments. Well, that year has turned into 9 years. Over the years, the DREAM Act has been a victim of a filibuster on the floor of the Senate 5 different times. As the DREAM Act has languished in the Senate, hundreds of thousands of young people have been left with their futures in doubt. But that hasn't stopped them from fighting for their dreams and giving everything they can to this country. It has been my honor to be the voice of the Dreamers for 20 years. They have been an inspiration. I've had the privilege of sharing over 125 of their personal stories on the Senate floor. The posters, colored photographs that you see around you represent just a small fraction of the stories that I've told. Dreamers have taught children in our nation's classrooms, dazzled audiences at world-class music venues like Carnegie Hall, fought in American wars, and have started American businesses. During the past year, as our nation was ravaged by a pandemic, and we were cheering on the healthcare heroes who risked their lives for us every minute of every day, Dreamers were saving American lives. According to the classification used by President Trump, more than 200,000 DACA recipients are essential, critical infrastructure workers. Among them are thousands of frontline healthcare workers, doctors, intensive care nurses, paramedics, respiratory therapists. We are lucky to be joined by one of those heroes today, Manuel Bernal Mejia, or Dr. Bernal as I'm going to call him. First arrived in the United States at the age of 2, grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, graduated at the top of his class in high school, and developed a passion for medicine. That passion led him to my home state of Illinois, where he enrolled in the very first medical school in the nation to admit DACA recipients, Loyola University Chicago's Stritch School of Medicine. Today, Dr. Bernal has taken a break from the work that he's doing in an emergency room on the south side of Chicago in one of the busiest trauma hospitals in our community. During this pandemic, Dr. Bernal has literally risked his life every day to serve our country and save lives. In 2017, the former president attempted to terminate DACA. Just imagine what it would have meant for our country if the Supreme Court had not stopped him from deporting heroes like Dr. Bernal to countries they hardly remember. The legislation we're focusing on today, the Dream and Promise Act, recognizes dreamers aren't the only immigrants with a dream. And they are far from the only people falling through the cracks of our broken system. This includes 400,000 people living in the United States under temporary protected status, TPS. Like DACA recipients, TPS recipients have saved lives during this pandemic. More than 130,000 TPS holders are essential critical infrastructure workers, including 11,600 healthcare workers. We're going to hear from one of them this morning. His name is Rony Ponthieu. I think I pronounced that close to correct. Is it? Good. Bien. And he was granted TPS after a devastating earthquake hit Haiti in 2010. He and his wife resettled in Florida, where they raised 2 children, and where Mr. Ponthieu works as a nurse in the respiratory unit of his hospital treating COVID-19 patients. After former President Trump attempted to eliminate TPS for Haiti in 2017, Mr. Ponthieu pleaded with him to, quote, help us stay in this country with peace of mind so we can save the most people possible. That is all TPS recipients like Mr. Ponthieu and dreamers like Dr. Bernal are asking for. They're not asking for a handout, but an opportunity to continue to serve and save lives in America. We need people just like them. DACA and TPS recipients and their households contribute an estimated $17.4 billion in federal taxes and $9.7 billion in state and local taxes every single year. By enacting the Dream and Promise Act, we can increase our nation's GDP by an estimated $799 billion over 10 years and create more than 285,000 new jobs. There is a mistaken notion that we have a static number of jobs in America and we all have to fight over them. We are finding that by bringing talented people in to serve this country and to create businesses, we actually have a dynamic that increases the size of employment in our economy. We need a functioning immigration system that welcomes immigrants so we can grow our economy and put America on track to be a winner in the 21st century. The challenges we face at the border are no excuse for inaction. I've spoken to Senator Cornyn and Senator Sinema about the southern border. We are not going to ignore that reality, but this is a reality as well. There is no excuse for inaction. For too many years, Congress has looked the other way and found another excuse to put off this decision. It's time to allow these individuals, these future Americans, to finally become American citizens. That's why we must join the House in passing the Dream and Promise Act. Now I recognize Senator Grassley.